Be me, Mason, 23, proud little nonprofit kid with loud opinions. Spent too many nights arguing in comment sections at 1 a.m. Told people paternity tests were insecurity with better PR. Posted threads about love being the real DNA and all that. Felt morally bulletproof, like I invented empathy in my bedroom. Then a doctor said one sentence and my stomach dropped through the floor. My family looked normal from far away, like most families do. Dad's Gabe, 46, quiet hands, loud work ethic, soft heart. Mom's Lena, 44, charming in public, efficient in private. My little brother's Kai, 14, smart mouth, kind eyes, endless energy. I grew up using Dad as my proof that men can be good. He cooked dinners, fixed bikes, showed up, never asked for medals. When people joked about men always run, I'd point at him. There were tiny weird moments, but kids file them under normal. A barbecue when I was 9, neighbor squinting at Kai's face. He doesn't look like you, Gabe, said like a harmless joke. Lena laughed fast and said, he takes after my side, obviously. Dad smiled, but it was the kind that ends a conversation. Later I heard kitchen voices, low and sharp, then a door softly closed. Mom came out smiling, like the argument never existed. Kai got older and the differences got louder but still plausible. Darker tone, curlier hair, cheekbones that didn't match our photos. Mom had a museum of old relatives ready, framed and convenient. She'd pull out a sepia cousin like a magic trick. Dad would shrug and say, he's my boy, that's all. I believed him because believing him was easier than thinking. Fast forward to this year, and life stops being a philosophy class. Kai got sick in a way that makes adults suddenly whisper. Not a cold, not a cast, not anything you can joke away. Hospital lights, blood draws, waiting rooms that smell like plastic. He tried to be brave, then stopped fighting and just stared. They shaved a patch on his arm for an IV. He watched the hair fall like it meant something personal. Doctor said they needed family matching for treatment options. We'll test parents too, he said, like routine paperwork. He added careful voice. Sometimes this reveals paternity issues. It happens, he said. Like weather, like no one's fault. Lena nodded too quickly, like she was already late somewhere. Dad squeezed Kai's shoulder, gentle, steady, familiar. I sat there thinking about donor registries and optimism. Then the doctor came back with that frozen professional face. He kept glancing at the floor, like it might save him. He offered to speak privately once, then moved on when Mom refused. Lena said, we're family? Just say it here. Too bright. The nurse stared at her clipboard like it was scripture. The doctor cleared his throat and said it, clean and cold. Mr. Carter, you are excluded as the biological father. For a second I thought Dad didn't hear him at all. Dad's hands curled into slow fists on his knees. His jaw shifted like he was chewing glass. Lena laughed, thin and brittle, like she borrowed it from a stranger. That's ridiculous, she said. You mixed up the files. Her eyes flicked to Dad, then away, then back again. Her hand went to her mouth, then dropped like she caught herself. Doctor said the test was repeated, same result, no ambiguity. He said it like a report, not a story, not a betrayal. You are excluded. Again, as if repetition makes it safer. My chest tightened so hard I forgot how to swallow. Kai asked, small voice, what does that mean? Dad didn't look at him, because looking would break something. Mom said, it means the lab is wrong, like a command. Dad finally spoke, barely louder than breathing. "Run it again," he said, and the doctor just nodded. The nod was the worst part because it wasn't hopeful. The ride home was silent in the kind of way that screams. Mom's breathing was sharp, shallow, like she'd been running. Dad's knuckles went pale on the steering wheel. Kai stared out the window like the glass had answers. That night, Dad asked Mom to talk in their room. Door shut, voices rose, then snapped back down to whispers. I heard Lena say, "You're imagining things," like an old habit. I heard Dad say, "Don't," once, low and cracked. Then silence, then footsteps, then Dad on the couch. He slept in jeans, shoes by the door, like he expected exile. In the morning, Mom acted like breakfast could reset reality. She reloaded the dishwasher that was already full. She folded towels like she was mad at fabric. She talked about appointments and schedules and staying positive. Dad didn't eat, just stared at his coffee until it went cold. Kai stayed in his room and didn't joke for the first time. I walked around the house like it was a stranger's floor plan. 2 days later, Mom's story started shifting. Not once. Not cleanly. First it was, maybe the hospital messed something up. Then it was, I don't remember. It's all a blur. Then soft voice. Something happened and I don't want to talk. She said, it wasn't my choice, like it was a shield. I said, if that's true, we go to police now. Her face flashed panic, quick and ugly, then she looked away. Fine, she said, too fast. It was a mistake. Not a trauma, not a crime, not a story worth protecting. A mistake like spilling wine, like missing an exit. Dad's eyes went dead in a way I didn't know eyes could do. Kai opened his door and stood there, listening, too quiet. Mom saw him and her voice got softer, more careful. This doesn't change anything, she said, like she could decree it. Dad asked one question, steady voice, shaking hands. How long did you know there was a chance? Mom stared at the counter like it might answer for her. She said, I didn't know, then corrected. I didn't want to know. She hated silence, and it showed because she filled it with excuses. Dad asked again, who was it? And she swallowed wrong. She answered too fast, like she rehearsed it in the mirror. Some guy, she said. A random guy from a bar. Out of town, she added, then changed to passing through. Her dates didn't line up the first time she said them. She said spring, then said winter, then said, it doesn't matter. Dad didn't yell because yelling would make her the victim. He just sat there and let her talk herself into a corner. Mom finally exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. It was about 14 years ago, she said one night. Too much wine. A charity mixer from her office, loud music, cheap confidence. Dad was on night shifts back then, saving for the house. She said she felt lonely, like loneliness is a hall pass. She said the guy's name was Wes, construction crew on a nearby project. She didn't say it with a sob. She said it like a label. Then she told the part she thought was harmless, like it wouldn't matter. She said they were laughing and he put his hand on her knee. She said it happened mid-joke, casual, like an accident that stayed. She laughed and didn't move his hand away. She said his thumb tapped once, and it made her feel chosen. Then she said she kissed him outside. Cold air, hot face. No graphic details, just enough to make my skin crawl. She said it was quick, stupid, and she never saw him again. Dad asked, Did you ever try to find him? Mom said no, instantly, like she'd practiced that answer for years. She said it was to protect the family, but it sounded selfish. She said Dad was the real father because he did the work. She said DNA is just biology, like she was quoting my own posts. And the sickest part is my brain tried to grab those talking points. Habit is a drug, and I'd been high on it for years. I told Dad weakly, "He's still your son, you know." Dad looked at me for a long time without blinking. He said, "That's easy to say when you weren't lied to daily." He didn't say it cruel. He said it like fact. Kai came out and asked, "So what am I then?" Mom stepped forward, hands open like a therapist. Dad stepped back like her touch could burn. Kai started Googling things late at night. I could hear his keyboard. Am I adopted? What am I legally? Can records be changed? I found paper in the trash with Wes written over and over, like he was trying the name on for size. Mom tried to keep everyone calm by controlling the story. She'd call relatives first, then tell us what she told them. She answered for Dad in group chats, like he was a child. When Dad tried to speak, she'd cut in with the script. "Real fathers stay," she said, eyes wet, voice sharp. "Don't you dare say DNA," she snapped, like the word was violence. "You're his dad," she repeated, like repetition makes consent. Dad didn't fight her with emotion. He fought her by going quiet. He packed a bag and moved to his brother's spare room. He still drove Kai to appointments, still sat in waiting rooms. That's when the outside pressure arrived, loud and smug. Aunt said Dad should be the bigger person. Uncle said Mom was trash and got muted in the family chat. My friend Harper, 22, campus activist queen, texted me a lecture. "Men always make it about blood," she wrote like a stamp. She posted a quote graphic about love being thicker than DNA. She didn't name us, but everyone knows how subtweets work. I felt sick because I'd posted the same things before. I'd told guys online to man up, stop whining, raise the kid. I used to say tests are misogyny, like I invented morality. Now my father was sleeping on a couch he didn't deserve, and my brother was staring at his own face like it betrayed him. I started realizing something ugly about my beliefs. They were safe when they were theoretical, and cruel when they were real. Lena called me one night instead of texting, voice soft and urgent. I let it ring until it stopped, because calls don't leave fingerprints. I texted back, "Say it in a message, please." She replied, "Stop writing like a lawyer," and I didn't answer. Next morning, she cornered me in the kitchen, too close. She said I was making her feel unsafe with my documentation. She said I was spiraling. She was scared. I loved chaos. Then she tried to hug me too tight, like control with arms. I stepped back and said, "Text me what you want, clearly." She looked offended, like clarity was a personal attack. She said, "You're turning this into a war," like she wasn't the one lying. Dad's lawyer friend gave us a name, Mr. Hayes, calm and tired. Hayes said the court doesn't care who cried first, it cares who filed first. Hayes said the system rewards the calm liar, not the shocked victim. Dad stared at the table and asked what he could even do. Hayes said disestablishing paternity is possible, but not easy. He said it takes time, filings, hearings, and patience you won't have. He said, "Court doesn't care about vibes, it cares about paper." Dad asked if he'd still have to pay, voice low and ashamed. Hayes said, maybe. And that maybe sounded like swallowing glass. He said judges hate disruption, even when disruption is truth. He warned us not to expect a fairy tale punishment for Lena. Mom heard court and went into full narrative management mode. She started calling people instead of texting, always calling. When I didn't pick up, she left voicemails full of feelings. I kept replying by text, short and calm, because calm is armor. She hated that, because text means timestamps. She finally texted Dad something that made my hands shake. You're on the certificate, you'll pay either way. Then another line, colder, like she forgot to perform. I'll tell everyone you're unstable if you try to ruin me. I screenshotted it and sent it to Hayes in silence. Hayes replied, good. And I hated how normal that felt. Kai got worse and better in cycles, like a cruel tide. Some days he joked again, then he'd stare at the wall for hours. One day he asked Dad, do I still call you Dad? Dad's voice cracked and he said, you call me whatever feels safe. Kai nodded like he was trying not to cry in front of men. Mom watched and tried to smile, like she could sell comfort. Doctor said matching might decide what treatment even works, and Mom heard a deadline in that sentence. Then something changed, and it wasn't a feeling. It was logistics. Mom started leaving the house at odd times, phone glued to her palm. She'd step outside to take calls, pacing the driveway like a guard. One evening, she came back smelling like cold air and panic. She said she was running errands, then couldn't name the store. Dad texted me, she's looking for him, and I felt my throat close. Because finding Wes means admitting she always knew it mattered. And because Kai's blood doesn't care about anyone's politics. A week later, while I was home grabbing clothes, the doorbell rang. Mom wasn't home. Kai was upstairs sleeping. Dad was at the hospital. I opened the door and saw a man in a work jacket, mid-30s. He held a grocery bag like it was a peace offering. He cleared his throat before speaking, too formal, too fast. Hey, he said, is Lena here? He didn't say ma'am, didn't say Mrs. Carter, just Lena. He said my name like he'd practiced it. Mason, right? I asked who he was, voice steady, stomach doing flips. He looked past me into the hallway like he belonged there. He said, I'm Wes. Then paused one breath too long. He said, she asked me to drop off something for Kai. He talked too fast, then went silent, like he heard himself. I noticed his eyes kept flicking to my hands, like he expected me to swing, like he expected anger. Then he said, small, casual, nah, I don't want to cause trouble. That nah hit me like a splinter under a nail. Because Dad never says nah, and Lena never says nah. And Kai's been saying nah lately, like it came from somewhere. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. I asked why he was here, and his face tightened. He said Lena messaged him on social media, said it was important. He said he didn't know about Kai until last week. He said he had a wife and a life, and this felt unreal. Then he added, but if it helps the kid, I came. I told him to text me what Lena told him, word for word. He frowned and said, can't we just talk? I said, text it, and my voice didn't shake. He stared at me, then nodded, like he knew why. My phone buzzed a minute later with a long message. He wrote that Lena said Kai might be his, and Kai was sick. He wrote she said Gabe was being cruel and refusing to help. He wrote she said, please don't tell anyone yet. That last line made my skin go cold all over again. Mom pulled into the driveway mid-text, tires crunching gravel. She saw Wes and froze, then forced a smile that didn't reach anywhere. She tilted her head like she was evaluating danger. She said, "Mason, why are you outside?" Like outside itself was suspicious, like I was the problem. Wes held up the grocery bag awkwardly, like a prop. Lena took it and said, "Thank you. Too sweet, too staged." I said, "We need this in writing, all of it." Mom's face tightened, because writing is where fog dies. She tried to herd Wes inside, but I stayed planted on the step. I asked her, "Did you tell him Gabe refused to help?" Mom said, "You're twisting," and I said, "Answer yes or no." She stared at me like I'd broken an unspoken rule. Wes looked between us like he wanted to evaporate. Mom said, "I said Gabe was upset," then changed to confused. Her story shifted again, not once, not cleanly. I asked Wes, "Did she ask you to keep this secret?" Wes nodded and said quiet, "Yeah, she said don't blow it up." Kai came down the stairs in socks, hair messy, eyes tired. He looked at Wes, and his face did something I can't describe. Like recognition without memory, like a puzzle piece hovering. Mom rushed to him, hands out, voice soft. "Sweetie, it's okay." Kai stared at Wes and asked, "Are you my dad?" The word dad landed like a brick in a glass house. Wes swallowed hard and said, "I don't know, kid." Dad walked in right then, hospital bracelet still on his wrist. He saw Wes and stopped like someone hit pause on him. Dad didn't yell, he just looked at Mom, hollow and steady. Mom tried to speak, but words failed for once. Wes mumbled he'd leave, backing toward the driveway. Dad said, "Stay." Not as a threat, as a command for truth. He said, "If you're here, don't run now." Mom said, "Gabe, please." Like please could erase 14 years. Dad said, "Don't," again, low, cracked, familiar. Kai sat on the bottom step and covered his face with his hands. That night, Hayes told us to keep everything in text. He said, "No more phone calls, no private understanding." He said, "If she wants to rewrite reality, make her type it." Lena tried calling Harper, tried calling relatives, tried calling anyone. I watched her hover over her phone like it was a weapon. Harper posted again about compassion, about men and ego. I sent Harper one screenshot, just one, Mom's threat line. Harper's typing bubble appeared, then vanished, then appeared again. Then she wrote, "That's not what she told me." Weeks turned into months, and the process got ugly and boring. Filings, dates, paperwork, waiting, more signatures. Dad still paid support during the process because the system moved slow. He hated it, but he did it because Kai needed stability. Wes did the tests because he's not a cartoon villain. Results came back, and the world got simpler in the worst way. Wes matched, Dad didn't, biology didn't care about anyone's speeches. Kai didn't celebrate, didn't cry, just looked tired and older. Mom tried to hug him, and he leaned away, small and sharp. Mom kept saying, "This changes nothing." But everything changed. She tried to host family dinners like routine could anesthetize betrayal. She tried to control who knew what and when and how. She told people Dad was abandoning Kai during illness. Dad stopped defending himself out loud and started forwarding texts. Hayes said, "Let her talk, then let her read it later." We went to mediation first, not court drama, just fluorescent rooms. A mediator sat like a referee who hates everyone equally. Harper came as Mom's support, eyes righteous, jaw tight. Mom started with tears and values and best interest. She talked about love like love cancels consent. Dad said one sentence, calm, cracked, honest. I didn't consent to raising another man's child under a lie. Mom flinched, like consent was a dirty word. Mediator asked for messages, documents, timelines, anything concrete. Hayes slid a small stack across the table, neat and silent. Mom's face changed when paper entered the room. Because paper doesn't care how pretty your story sounds. Mediator tapped one printout and asked Mom to read it aloud. Mom tried to summarize, tried to paraphrase, tried to soften. Mediator said, read the line. Flat voice, no patience. Mom swallowed wrong and read, you'll pay either way. Harper stopped nodding for the first time, like oxygen left her. Mediator asked, is this a threat regarding financial obligation? Mom said no, then said it was emotional, then said context. Mediator asked yes or no, and Mom's mouth kept failing. Dad sat still, eyes down, hands steady, like he'd rehearsed calm. Mediator asked about, I'll tell everyone you're unstable. Mom tried to laugh it off, but the laugh came out broken. Hayes said, that's coercion, and Mom said, that's not fair. Mediator said, fair is not my job. Clarity is my job. Harper looked at Mom like she was seeing a stranger's face. Mom turned to Harper and whispered, you're not helping. Harper whispered back, you lied to me. It was quiet, but it cut deeper than shouting ever could. We didn't get a perfect win, because real life hates perfect. Court didn't punish Mom for betrayal. Court isn't a morality club. Court fixed rules, adjusted obligations, and wrote schedules in cold ink. Dad was removed as legal father going forward after the order. But the judge said Dad still owed some support until the order date. Dad signed that paper like swallowing glass, jaw tight, eyes dry. He did it because fighting longer meant Kai losing more time. Wes was ordered to begin support as the biological father. Mom looked furious, not sad, because control was her food. Kai's treatment moved forward, slow, brutal, hopeful in tiny increments. Dad still showed up, still drove him, still held the bag of meds. Not because court forced him, because love isn't a court order. Kai started calling Dad Gabe in public and Dad in private. It wasn't a betrayal. It was a compromise his heart could survive. Lena tried to reset once the paperwork locked her down. She texted Dad, for Kai, can we be a family again? Dad replied, text me a plan and stop rewriting what happened. Mom didn't answer because she had nothing that wasn't fog. Harper deleted her posts over the next few days, one by one. No apology thread, no accountability, just quiet erasure. She texted me, I'm sorry, then stopped typing mid-sentence. Later, she posted nothing but a photo of a blank notebook, like she ran out of moral quotes and didn't know what to do. Mom tried calling again, voice shaky, softer than I'd ever heard. I let it ring, then texted, say it in a message. She replied, you're heartless. Like heartless is a magic spell. I replied one line, cold and boring, and it felt like justice. They can delete posts. They can't delete timestamps. Some nights I still think about my old comment section self. How easy it was to be righteous when it wasn't my kitchen. How fast love is DNA turns into a weapon in the wrong hands. Dad never asked me to apologize, but I did anyway. Kai never asked me to pick sides, but I stayed near him. Lena never fully apologized, because apologizing means losing control. Wes sent one text later, short, exhausted, human. I'm sorry for the blast radius I didn't know. I didn't forgive him. I didn't hate him. I just saved it. Now when someone says DNA doesn't matter, I don't argue online. I just remember Dad's hands on that steering wheel, knuckles pale. I remember Lena folding towels like fabric could hide 14 years. I remember Kai asking, "Who am I?" like identity was a debt. I remember Harper's nod stopping when paper hit the table. Turns out you don't beat fog with speeches or vibes. You don't beat fog with speeches. You beat it by making it type. Then you let timestamps do the talking.